Hello and welcome to the Pre-Chiro podcast, where we just have conversations with chiropractors, chiropractic students, and prospective chiropractic students to try and illuminate this path of becoming a chiropractor. In 2024, here we are interviewing Dr. Jacqueline Segura. Thank you so much, representing BGI Seminars, but also yourself. And I would love if you could just get us started by maybe introducing yourself and reflecting on that time in life, that pivot point where you decided you want to become a chiropractor. Was it early childhood? Was it at the end of college? Are you a career transitioner? What was your story for finding chiropractic?
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for having me on here, Ben. It's going to be a great discussion. So I'm Jacqueline Segura and I own BGI Seminars. And I knew I wanted to be a chiropractor from the time that I was itty bitty. And so my mom was a chiropractor, my aunt was a chiropractor, my great uncle was a chiropractor. So my aunt is Sue Brown, who created BGI, and her older sister is my mom. And so I grew up in chiropractic. And so even as a tiny child, I was in the office, loved everything that was happening, and like playing chiropractor as a itty bitty. I have all these memories climbing beneath tables at seminars when there was no other childcare and I was running around seminars. So I definitely grew up in this field. I will say though, people ask me, was it the work that inspired me? And truly, I didn't know about the work until I got to chiropractic school. I knew the name BGI, but I really, other than the philosophy that gets, kind of spoken about and fed into family life, into family discussion, I wasn't in the work. But what I did see was my mom being the family doc, like old movies that depicted like medical professionals that were like the village doc or the family doc. And I got to actually see that in my mom's office. And she was often the first person who knew about a baby being born, or several times the first person that was told when a divorce was going to happen or something was passing away, these major life moments. And that community connection and community support is actually what inspired me the most to become a chiropractor. I think we have a really unique opportunity to really be with people with the healing power of touch and the healing power of community. And so I want my office, it is, and I want to keep building it to be that community support place. And that's genuinely what inspired me to get here. Before chiropractic school, I was a yoga teacher. I was a massage therapist. I've done professional energy work for a very long time. And then all of that healing path led me to chiropractic school. And now when I teach in BGI, I say all of those experiences are added to my tool belt. Like all of that information doesn't just get lost, it gets added to the new information that I have from chiropractic school, from BGI, and from my career now.
Yeah, and I think it's very interesting for you to touch on your background with those other paths that you took, because me having gone the massage route and studied some yoga and gotten into meditation, when I actually was initially exposed to BGI, it it was easier for me to make the transition. I had also practiced Reiki, so it was easier for me to make the transition to opening my mind up to things that are not so rooted in the physical. I'm just wondering if we're just speaking to the prospective student at any stage of life. They could be in high school, college, or in their careers, and they're thinking of becoming a chiropractor. Can you maybe speak to the lessons that you learned, maybe the hard way, or the challenges that you had to overcome of transitioning into chiropractic school, and maybe some things that they can explore within themselves before they get to chiropractic school in their pre-chiropractic years?
Yeah, absolutely. I like to say that in chiropractic school, there's this curriculum behind the curriculum. And the curriculum that behind the curriculum that I see is this spiritual, mental, emotional transformation process that I like to call birthing that inner chiropractor, like the healer, that connection to source, whatever people's paradigm says that is. And that pathway is so essential. What we do what we do is so much more than just our hands. I mean, our hands are profound, and I don't want to diminish that, but there's so much more to it than that. And the way that we can connect to that something more is that internal path. And so long before you're actually in chiropractic school, really taking the time to observe your own thoughts, to notice what helps you feel connected, helps you feel grounded, helps you be connected with other people. All of that, I like to say, adds to the tools in your tool belt. So small things that can be really profound are like talking to people who've had completely different life experiences than you and really hearing them, like really connecting to them. All of the diversity of those experiences in my past helped me serve the people who come into my office now. The more I can connect to people, understanding different ranges of emotions, maybe different comfort levels and different emotions. You might meet people who are really comfortable in anger, but shy away from sadness, or really comfortable in fear, but don't ever be angry. Whatever those comfort in emotional states are, regardless of what's natural in you, allowing yourself to connect to other people who have different ways of experiencing the world is just going to expand that ability to connect with people once you're in practice. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. I love that. And I really enjoy the sort of sprouting from the recognition that every physical experience has a mental, emotional, spiritual component to it. So I'm just wondering, from your vantage point these days, not to jump around, but how do you hold space for people that are coming in through a lens of a very physical lens, and how do you maybe expand that for them, or how do you work with people?
Absolutely. So what's beautiful about the perspective of BGI is that I can have the same conversation with different words many times. So I could talk about BGI from a very energetic, esoteric, potentiality perspective. I can also have that same conversation from a quantum physics, potential energy and kinetic energy perspective. And I can have that same conversation from a tensegrity, fascia, muscles, and bones conversation. And to me, no matter what perspective I'm looking at that, all of it is true. In BGI, we really don't make a separation of the physical, the chemical, the mental, emotional, or even the energetic or spiritual, if that's the paradigm. And so I can meet people where they're at from whatever perspective they're coming in, because it's not my job to shift their paradigm. Like maybe it's my job to help them see what's more available or what could be possible within their current paradigm, right? But it's not my job to teach or to preach or anything like that. And so the same conversation about fascia with one person, or the spiritual implications of whatever with someone else, can absolutely bridge those gaps. And so to me, they're all the same conversation, and I'm just changing my words depending on who I'm talking to and where we're meeting them at. Yeah.
No, I love it. And if you could maybe just speak to what you've observed, the basic transformational process that people undergo when they're doing the BGI seminar track, and they're practicing it in between seminars, and then they come back multiple times. So let's talk about the fundamentals of BGI. What are the skills that people learn? What is the experience like coming to BGI seminar?
Yeah, absolutely. So on the most basic level, BGI is founded on the theory of potential energy, theory of subluxation that Sue created for us. And so this theory says that subluxation, being the thing that we chiropractors adjust, is not only a bone putting pressure on a nerve. We say, of course, that can happen, but we say there's actually more that also can happen. And so what she sees what she wrote for us and what our work is founded on is that every experience we have in life, whether it's stubbing our toe or someone flips you off while you're driving in traffic, or you get into a fight with your partner, right? Any of those experiences hold information. And that information is just an opportunity for our bodies to learn. Now, if on that day I have had great sleep, I'm in great connection with my partner, I ate great food, I'm feeling connected with my spiritual practices, everything, the stars are aligned, whatever it is, and new information happens, then my body is probably able to adapt in that moment. I go into a little bit of chaos, like my atoms actually vibrate at a higher frequency. We'll call that chaos. I can learn from that moment. And then what actually happens is my atoms on a cellular atomic level actually learn. And so Sue would say that's a tiny step on the path of personal evolution of my body learning, right? Now, if on that day the stars are not aligned, my cat threw up on the shoes I was going to wear to work or whatever, and I can't adapt in that moment, we say that innate, that wisdom that is inside us is so wise, is so infinite that we don't just lose the opportunity to learn. We actually can store that potential information or that potential energy as subluxation. And so then it's our job as chiropractors when we're adjusting them. Of course, I care about people's pain, but I'm not trying to get people out of pain. That's not my job, right? It's actually my job to support them in really remembering their own magnificence. And in the moment of the adjustment, we're actually converting that potential energy to kinetic energy. So that's like high school physics, potential energy, kinetic energy, and there's probably like a boulder on a hillside. And so I'm like, I don't have a boulder in front of me, but I have this little jar. So if this is a hillside and this is a boulder, this boulder is full of potential energy. And so just with a little bit of force or a chiropractic adjustment, we can convert that potential energy, and then that boulder falls off the hill. We'll say that's a conversion to kinetic energy. And so we're saying that that's actually on a physics level what's happening in the moment of the adjustment. But on a mental, emotional, more esoteric level, we're actually having the opportunity to learn from that potential and have our entire system on all the different levels learn, right? So as people come, whether it's students or docs who come to our seminars, the first thing we say is in a BGI 1, we're going to teach about the potential energy theory of subluxation. First of all, we see that perspective can really help to build the connection of the mind-body connection and really help us to fully remember ourselves as fully remember ourselves as expanded and fully able to continuously learn, like to be on that personal path of evolution. So we talk about potential energy theory of subluxation. In a BGI 1, we're also going to teach a very basic skill called establishing continuity. We actually call that a preparatory step in the adjustment. So we call it a separation, it's separate from the adjustment. We do that before the adjustment. And there's different ways we can talk about it. I like to paint, and so sometimes I call that like prepping the canvas. So we're prepping the canvas of the person. What's happening within the body is that we're making sure that all of the ways that the body can communicate to itself can actually communicate to itself. So the ways we know the body can communicate to itself are obviously the nervous system, but in addition to the nervous system, your circulatory system, your hormones, your chemistry, and even the electromagnetic field, so the energetic field that is both within and around us. We want to make sure there's continuous communication within the body, or there's continuity, there's connectedness, and from that place, then we start the adjustment. In BGI 1, we're really teaching really precise palpation skills. And so throughout the BGI curriculum, the level of palpation skills that get built is just so high. And so for people who perhaps are interested in BGI, but it's not their main course, like maybe for them in their chiropractic career, it's a side dish or an appetizer, I like to say, come to a BGI 1, learn about the theory of potential energy theory of subluxation, learn about establishing continuity, and work on those palpation skills. Sue would say that if all chiropractors just established continuity and that was the only thing they learned from her material, that she genuinely believed that was the biggest gift that she gave to chiropractic. And no matter what technique or approach that you're applying after establishing continuity, we found time and time again that it just supports the ease of the adjustment, the ability for the person on the table to actually receive those adjustive forces in a way that they can utilize and actually benefit from. And the amount of work, like force or trying hard, that the chiropractor has to do is often way more at ease. And so even if BGI isn't somebody's cup of tea, we'll say just establishing continuity and working on those palpation skills can really support literally any chiropractor. For those people who love BGI and really want to return, like you mentioned, they keep coming back to seminars. So we have BGI 1, 2, and 3. In BGI 1, we teach the posterior geometry. So all of BGI is based on the sacred geometry that is naturally within all of our bodies. And so we talk about the posterior of the body, the back of the body first in BGI 1, and we talk about those foundational skills like I already mentioned. Then in BGI 2, we talk about the front of the body, the anterior of the body, and that gets into our chemistry, our emotions. We talk about organs. And so the back of the body, we're much more in structural osseous tissues, maybe some muscular and soft connective tissues, but more what chiropractors are familiar with, those osseous tissues in the posterior of the body. Of course, we have osseous tissues in the anterior of the body. We absolutely mentioned those too, but then we're also mentioning organs and different types of changes that can happen, like pregnancy with the front of the body, like what changes there. The other part of BGI 2, we also talk about the sagittal geometry. And so the sagittal geometry is the relationship of the back of the body with the front of the body. So the back of the body and the front of the body create this relationship that creates the three-dimensionality or our volumetric space in the body. And so adjustments, perhaps like an anterior thoracic, opens up that volumetric space with like in the thoracic cavity. And so thinking about that spatial relationship. So really that's the first introduction to the three-dimensionality. Then we move on to BGI 3. In BGI 3, we take that volumetric space that we found in the sagittal geometry, and then we just notice that those volumes actually swing and move in space. And so that can happen throughout our body, and that is called the coronal plane. And so we add in things like our arms, legs, our mandible, everything that swings in the body. And really that's the rest of the anatomy on our body that we hadn't already mentioned up until that point. And so we get the plane of movement. And so now we're adding in how the body actually moves in space. And then we actually return to some of that material from BGI 1 in BGI 3, only now we're adding more layers of the three-dimensionality and the detail of the three-dimensionality of the body. And so all of that, BGI 1, 2, and 3, we're adding in what I like to call mind candy. So we're giving more and more detail. We're adding in a lot of information. And so as people are learning the information, we're also increasing their skills along that path. Part of the skills we're looking for are more ease in the adjustment, more specificity. Sue was really inspired in watching what she would consider chiropractic masters and noticing that often when those people would adjust, she was noticing that they might shift the positioning just a little bit, or wiggle a neck just a little bit before a supine cervical, or whatever the force was. And that little bit of dialing in of the precision, she really noticed like that's what was making the difference between the people we might call chiropractic masters and everybody else. But that special something was really hard to teach. And so what inspired her in BGI was really how to create a playground to support people on that path of mastery. Now, we like to say there's no such thing as a BGI master. There are people who have graduated from the Academy of Mastery, and there are many people who are on the path of mastery. And so what we see in chiropractic mastery, and really I would say mastery of anything, is that there is no arrived. There's no, okay, I got it. I got the skill. I pushed the button. We're here now. No, real people who we would call chiropractic masters, they're constantly pushing the envelope. They're continuously learning. They're continuously moving forward. And so from the perspective of a student, maybe very beginning of school, getting those palpation skills, getting really inspired about the possibilities within chiropractic and developing some of those loves. Part of our curriculum, behind the curriculum, is also really helping people to pull out what are those individual tools in their tool belt? What are the experiences that they've brought? What are the natural ways that they relate to the body in order to gain more information? We call BGI an approach, not a technique. And that's because we want people on the path of their own personal chiropractic mastery. We're not here to create little me's or little Sue's. We're only here to support people on their own path. And so part of going through the BGI 1, 2, 3 as a student is us supporting them to find what are those passions, what are those skills that they already have alive in them, and how to bring them forward in their chiropractic career. Now, from the perspective of a doc who's maybe been in practice for a long time, learning the skills of BGI can often reignite inspiration. It can significantly support the mastery they already have, because now we might be putting language to some things that often chiropractors who've been in practice for a long time do naturally. I like to say Sue didn't make this up. She didn't, draw geometry on the body. She noticed that it was already there. One of my favorite descriptions of BGI that a doc actually in chiropractic school said to me was that BGI looks like philosophy in motion. Or Liliana Warner, who's one of our lead instructors, she says BGI is the clinical application of universal truths. So if we think about that, philosophy in motion, we're actually connecting the things we learn in philosophy, almost like history, to actually clinically relevant skills. Like those things are not actually two separate things, that the philosophy, the art, and the science all together come as one in motion in the art of the adjustment from a BGI perspective. I watched so many chiropractors who are my mom's friends, or maybe my mom practiced in Kentucky, so she was a part of the Kentucky Chiropractic Association. And I watched so many chiropractors get so long in their career, and many of them I would watch to start to get a little disheartened. And I wondered, what's the difference? What's the difference between some of these docs who've been in practice for many, many years, who are getting tired and disheartened, and some of these other docs that I see who are just as many years in practice, but still on fire about chiropractic? And when I really looked, like, what's the difference? I noticed the difference is the people who are still on fire are still pushing the edge. They're learning new things. They're still developing their art. They're not arrived on that path of mastery. They're still on the path of mastery. And I see that BGI really provides that playground, whether people are brand new or been in practice for 20 years. Yeah.
Yeah, and after going to BGI seminars, I think that one thing that it did for me personally was it kind of expanded my scope or my consciousness of what an adjustment could entail. Because as a chiropractic student, you're in adjusting lab, you're in adjusting technique class, you're learning the mechanical way to move a joint and how to analyze the spine for specific areas that you might want to apply a force. But BGI is really inviting you to see beyond the spine, see the interconnection or the relationships between the spine and the other areas of the body. So I appreciate you going in depth, in detail as to like all the different BGI seminar classes. Is BGI Osseous still taught? And if so, I'm curious like how you see that fitting into the BGI offerings, because for me, BGI Osseous was particularly, all right, so one thing I'll say with BGI, usually when you go to a BGI seminar, people are getting adjusted early in the morning before the seminar starts. And that's usually one of the most valuable times of the day to observe people who are applying BGI in their art, in their artistry. I'm just curious, what did BGI do? Like, what was your process of development in school? Because you had like your roots in BGI, and then you obviously were in chiropractic school, having to learn it a certain way. Like, what was that bridge for you? How did you practice with your fellow students? How did you take what you're learning on a weekend in a parallel curriculum type of seminar and apply it to what you're learning and how you're adjusting in the context of being a student at a chiropractic institution. I don't know if that's easy to do.
Yeah, absolutely, actually. So I found studying BGI at the same time while I was in school, and really the first seminar I went to was my very first quarter. What that supported me in was I was inspired from go. And school is hard, right? We all know school is hard. Every chiropractor in the US would tell you school is hard. We know what you're going through. We remember. And so it's easy to get bogged into those classes and to forget the purpose. And in the cycle of scantrons and tests and, whatever it is, it's easy to get lost in the purpose. And so being grounded in seminars or clubs that are philosophically sound to why you are actually there helps that fire stay stoked while you're in school. What's beautiful about BGI is that we're teaching how not just one bone is subluxated, but the entire body is actually subluxated. So there's this concept called subluxation tracks. And so a subluxation track is actually how we find the information of how and where we want to adjust. What's beautiful is in school, they're teaching specific moves, and there's teaching specific listings of vertebra for those specific moves. Now, I absolutely memorized the things I needed to memorize in order to pass the classes. And at a certain point, you're in clinic. Now, in student clinic, all across the country, different schools have different rules about what you're actually allowed to apply in there. Now, in integrity to the school's rules, you can absolutely only do the moves that are being taught on that campus, but no one on any of these campuses is saying you can only think about certain things. What is happening in your brain has nothing to do with anybody else, right? We all get to say what's happening in our own brains, okay? And so what I found was, because, like I said, BGI is the clinical application of universal truths, that if there is a subluxation track that actually wants to be adjusted, and because innate is so wise and there's really infinite potential in all of us, that absolutely you can find subluxation tracks from a BGI perspective that absolutely align with the listing and the appropriate move that they're teaching on campus. And so what they're teaching on campus is founded in truth, even if students are frustrated in it. Like there's a foundation of truth, right? And BGI is founded in truth. And so if things are founded in truth, you can absolutely find ways to align them. And that's true whether it's on campus or any and all chiropractic techniques that people might already have in their tool belt.
Yeah, and just speaking about the student culture in chiropractic school, there's clubs. Obviously, there's BGI Club. I like to build bridges. In my mind, BGI is sort of 1 degree connected to MLS, to network, to maybe some other techniques out there that I'm not aware of. Maybe KTC even right now, having become more popular, and the IM training, innate artistry mastery. I would say anybody that are in those clubs need to at least look at BGI, need to become aware of BGI, and vice versa. But can you maybe speak to the student culture that you've observed maybe when you were a student, but also now that you're in a leadership position? What is the BGI community sort of offer to students, and what are the clubs maybe practicing? I'm just curious if you could go into that a little bit.
Yeah, we find that the people who like our community are people, sometimes we find people who love low force techniques, love what people like to call tonal work. I say all chiropractic is tonal. Dee Dee said that chiropractic was founded on tone. That means all chiropractic is tonal. But often when people are talking about tonal work, they mean low force contacts. And so BGI has a great range for low force contacts. And like you said earlier, there's also BGI Osseous, which is a whole seminar. BGI Osseous really bridges looking at adjusting from those people who love beautifully artistic osseous moves from a BGI perspective. Well, because BGI is just an approach, not a technique, you can actually apply any force that you want. So that can be very low force, those more traditional tonal concepts of like low force contacts, like maybe a fingertip, or big dynamic forces, maybe more popular in osseous adjusting. We find people either love us because they're coming in from that gentle, low force perspective, or they're coming in because they love the philosophy of chiropractic and they're looking for a way to actually have that bridge. So, any technique that is philosophically sound, like you mentioned, so many that are philosophically sound, right? Any of those techniques that are philosophically sound, those people often also find a home with us. So, absolutely, we have tons of people who love more dynamic osseous forces. We like to say we don't train osseous moves. There are people who do that better than us. Like you mentioned a couple already. There are people who do that. Even in a BGI osseous, we're not specifically training osseous moves. We leave that to the people who do that, right? Full time. What we're doing is helping to bridge in that osseous move. How can we refine positioning? How can we bridge the gap of the global tensegrity within that osseous move? How do we have that subluxation track through the whole body, inform what osseous move, when we do the osseous move, all of those things. Yeah. Did that answer your question? I'm
Definitely,
not sure.
yeah, no, for sure. And then maybe just speak about your practice or other BGI practitioners. Like, how would you describe the way that you've set up your practice? How do you work with people? Is it one with one, or one with many? And is it open or semi-closed? And what types of, I guess, systems have you put in place that are congruent with your style and approach that you've developed and evolved over time?
Absolutely. So, really, I think the biggest strength of BGI is that our chiropractors who study BGI are extremely diverse in how they want to practice and how they want to apply the concepts. So, we can have people who've studied just as much BGI as me who look like they're adjusting completely differently than me. We actually celebrate that because, like I said, we're supporting people being on their personal path of mastery. So, in my office, I have a combination of private sessions and open adjusting sessions. I personally, I find the most joy in the open adjusting or group adjusting type sessions. That looks like I'm adjusting more than one table at a time. People are on the table for about 30 minutes on average, sometimes a little longer. What I love about the open adjusting is, one, it's very efficient. It supports me to be able to support a lot of people with the time that I have in the office, which, especially the longer you're in practice, the more you'll realize there are actually more people who need support than we have time to support. So the ways that we can optimize that really helps to support that community involvement, like I mentioned earlier. So in an open adjusting session, what's beautiful is I'm applying a force or adjusting a subluxation track, and then people get rest and integration time in real time. So as I walk away, I'm still very much aware, and that's part of the skill of multi-table adjusting. I'm very much aware of what's happening with them. Although my hands are not with them, I'm still with them. I'm applying a force on the next table over, but I'm also aware of the process that's happening there. And I can do that throughout the room. What that provides is, I've actually found people can go deeper in their work because they're getting that integration time in real time. Often I've given people homework about their breath, or homework about maybe a meditation practice, or whatever is going to help them connect, even stretching, right? They actually have the time built in to do that while I'm adjusting other tables. Lots of people take that time to really just connect with themselves. Life can be so busy and fast that time becomes really valuable to actually just be within themselves. I also do private sessions, private adjustment. I love that for, especially when somebody wants to talk to me a little bit more. Maybe they're working through trying to come up with a game plan for one of their health goals. And so that one-on-one adjustment is lovely for when we need to talk a little bit more. Whereas in the open adjusting, there's a little bit of, what's going on with you type thing, but mainly it's silent. People are just having an internal body experience. In our office specifically, we have a lot of people who support that mind-body connection. And so school definitely prepared me to refer to PTs and OTs, or maybe an ortho or whatever. I will say I absolutely do that when it's necessary, but my number one referral is actually mental health practitioners. And actually that's probably our number one referral back to us, because we're doing such support with those emotional experiences in how they're affecting the physical experiences, or the other way around, the physical experiences affecting those emotional experiences. Because of that, often people need someone to be able to support them with words. And I have time, but I have limited time. And I'm not a mental health practitioner, right? And there's a large range of mental health practitioners that we both refer to and from, depending on what's going on, all the way from spiritual coaches to clinical psychologists, and there's a wide range there. But making sure that there are people in their community who can continue their healing support, I've noticed, just deepens what we do in our office also. Now, lots of other BGI docs might not be so emotion focused, but that's what really supports me and makes me joyous.
No, I'm glad you touched on that. I don't think I've ever heard somebody talk about referral relationships with mental health practitioners. I think it's really cool for students to hear, like, okay, I'm going to be working with other professionals, I'm supporting individual people, but there's a team that they have that I need to be aware of, or that I need to help them build if that's important to them, or if I think that that's a good idea. Can you maybe just, this is a totally different type of question, but can you maybe just speak to maybe your vision for BGI, or like how BGI has evolved in the last 5-10 years with Sue passing, and just kind of how it's changed or how it's staying the same, and any intentions that you have moving forward to continue to grow and evolve the community?
Absolutely. So Sue passed in 2015. And then I took over in 2017. And so what was so beautiful is our whole community came together to really keep BGI alive in those years in the in-between. I mean, people really, really stepped up in a beautiful, heart-called way. And then they continue to step up even after I took over. And so now we're here and we have this beautiful team of teachers all around the world. So the things that are the same are all of our material is still founded on Sue's original work. All of our manuals are her original words. The edits that have happened are nothing to change the work. The work has not been changed. Things that have changed are there's way more teachers. When Sue was alive, she had a large teaching staff, but 99% of the time it was her who was presenting. What is so beautiful now is that we have a diversity of teachers, and we actually really suggest getting to learn from multiple different people, because if we're asking you to find your individual mastery, then hearing this information from multiple people also helps to support that. You'll find different learning styles or different teaching styles really supporting that. So we have BGI 1, 2, 3, like I already mentioned. Then we have BGI Osseous, which you mentioned. And so BGI Osseous has always been a different seminar every single time it was presented. There's a manual, and the manual is consistent. However, the presentation of it has been different every time. Just recently, we've been working to unify that experience just a little bit. We want to keep the flavor of the excitement and the individuality, but we actually want to move some of that individuality into more specific, what we call play shops. So would say, we're not working here, we're playing. And so as people bring in, I really want to show this beautiful move and how it connects to the material in BGI, we're actually now adding that material more to a play shop. Play shops can be 1 or 2 days. And so that could be, sometimes it's docs inspired to teach material. Sometimes it's the attendees, whether they're docs or students, saying, I really need support on whatever, supine cervicals. Then we'll design a whole 1-day supine cervical to support the specific need of those people. And so that's a play shop model. The Osseous model is becoming more unified. So that's happening in the future. We're going to see a little bit more consistency in what's happening in a BGI Osseous. In the same way there's consistency. If you come to a BGI 1, it's a BGI 1. If you come to a BGI 2, it's a BGI 2, and so on. We also have BGI 4M. And so this year we have a 4M in June in the USA. We did one in March in Australia. And so 4M is advanced material beyond BGI 3. So you have to have been to BGI 1, 2, and 3 in order to get to 4M. And so the material is more advanced. We're also looking to present anytime there's new work that's being developed by one of our instructors or longtime community members, just people who've been around for a long time. And so whether this is material that I'm just starting to develop, or this is the material that's actually going to turn into a whole seminar, but we're debuting it for 2 hours here at Forum. So it's often cutting edge material and also very advanced material. Forum, I would say, is more like a conference than a seminar. So we have a higher number of attendees, multiple different instructors presenting, and every single one of those is different on purpose. We want it to be exciting and new and cutting edge every time. Currently in the US, we're holding those every 2 years. In the past, when Sue was here, she developed the Academy of Mastery. The Academy of Mastery is 9 modules long. She was able to complete 2 classes in 2013 and 2014. And then in 2015, she started a class, but she wasn't able to complete it. Now, since I've been around, we haven't had both the field or the instructors to hold that material. We're now ready to actually present that. And so we've been taking last year and this year to really plan how we're doing that, including running a whole class in private to really test drive all of the material and how it's all going. And so many, many hours have been put into place to be able to actually say we're ready to present this to the world. And so right now there's a wait list out there. So if people have been to, you have to have been to 3 BGI 1s, 3 BGI 2s, 3 BGI 3s, BGI Forum, be 2 years at least in practice. And then even still, there's going to be interview questions and things that we're talking about, because this Academy of Mastery material, one, is so advanced and it's expensive to produce. And so I have this weird thing where I don't like to steal from people. And so taking people's money when they're not actually ready to apply that information feels like stealing to me. That feels out of integrity to BGI and out of integrity to myself. And so really those interview processes are supporting actually making sure that the people who are in that class are ready to apply that work in their practice and actually have it be tangible and usable for them. So really the Academy of Mastery is the biggest place in the future that we're growing. We're also hoping to increase our online offerings. For BGI, we find that teaching adjusting online just wouldn't work for our work. We need to be in the field together. You need that hands-on experience. You need that community support. However, there's lots of foundational material that we have, science, philosophy, a lot of ways of discussion that is totally appropriate for online, like the things that we're talking about here. Did I lose you? Oh, okay. I don't know. Okay. Sorry about that.
No, I appreciate it. So you're growing in many different directions, and things are sounding very healthy over at the BGI Seminar Headquarters. Sweet. That's great to hear. I mean, we need it. It holds space for people that are looking for something beyond what they may see in an adjusting classroom, a technique lab at a chiropractic school. And I think that it's super valuable for people to at least take BGI 1, at least expand your consciousness of how to approach a body on the table. So I think that was the intention and goal of this conversation. And if there's any other announcements you want to make, great. Otherwise, I think we're good at this point.
We're good, yeah. I think I would just like to say to the people who haven't been to chiropractic school yet, if you are feeling that calling to truly support people on their individual paths, chiropractic is such a beautiful vehicle for that. BGI supports that path by helping the chiropractor learn to be the person, or really bring out the skills they already have, to be the person who supports the people in their office to reconnect to their potentiality and their magnificence that's already alive in them too.